Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai World News. Let's kick things off with a story that has serious implications for global trade. According to BBC News, the Panama Canal Authority has announced it will be reducing the number of vessels allowed to pass through the waterway, and the culprit is El Niño. The ocean weather pattern has caused dramatically lower than normal rainfall in the region, which means water levels in the canal's reservoirs are dropping. Since the canal relies on fresh water to operate its locks, that's a real problem. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen this. Back in 2023 and 2024, similar restrictions caused shipping bottlenecks that rippled across global supply chains, and it looks like we could be heading for a repeat. For companies shipping goods between the Atlantic and Pacific, this means longer routes around South America, higher freight costs, and potential delays. If you rely on anything imported, electronics, food, raw materials, this is worth keeping a close eye on. Moving on now to a story that's drawing fierce criticism from human rights groups around the world. BBC News is reporting that 3 activists in Hong Kong have been found guilty in a national security trial. The charge? Inciting others to subvert state power, a crime under the sweeping security legislation that Beijing introduced for the territory. The activists had been involved in commemorating the Tiananmen Square massacre, an annual vigil that was once one of the largest of its kind in the world, but has since been effectively outlawed. This verdict is being seen as yet another sign of how dramatically the political landscape in Hong Kong has shifted since the 2020 national security law was enacted. Critics argue the law has been used to silence political opposition and civil society, while Beijing maintains it was necessary to restore stability after years of unrest. For the international community, this conviction will likely intensify ongoing debates about Hong Kong's autonomy and the future of civil liberties in the city. Now let's head to the UK, where the government's finances are making headlines for all the wrong reasons. The Financial Times is reporting that Britain recorded an unexpected budget deficit of £1.8 billion in July, a month that typically sees the government bring in a surplus, thanks to end-of-tax year receipts. This is a significant surprise to economists and markets alike. The timing is particularly awkward for new Chancellor John Healey, who is preparing to deliver his first full budget. The FT notes that bond markets are already watching closely, with warnings that investors, sometimes called bond vigilantes, could push up borrowing costs if the government is seen as spending beyond its means. Healey's allies have reportedly insisted he plans to stay well within Labour's fiscal rules, but today's numbers make that balancing act even trickier. With public services under strain and pressure to invest in infrastructure and public sector wages, the Chancellor faces a genuinely difficult needle to thread in the weeks ahead. From South Asia now, and a story that's been closely watched by millions of people across Pakistan and beyond. Both BBC News and the Financial Times are reporting on the latest twist in the saga of former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. A Supreme Court order compelled authorities to transfer Khan from prison to a hospital for a medical examination, but after receiving treatment, he was quickly returned to his jail cell. Khan, who remains enormously popular among large segments of the Pakistani public, has been behind bars on a range of charges he and his supporters say are politically motivated. His party has repeatedly called for his release, while the government maintains the legal process is being followed. The back and forth between the Supreme Court and the executive over Khan's treatment continues to highlight the deep institutional tensions running through Pakistani politics right now. The situation remains fluid, and his supporters say they'll continue pressing for his full release. Now to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, where a fascinating and potentially significant development is being reported by the Financial Times. Ukraine is reportedly seeking Elon Musk's help, specifically access to Starlink satellite connectivity, to enable drone strikes on Russian missile launcher positions located as far as 200 kilometers inside Russian territory. The idea is to equip long-range drones with Starlink terminals, giving them reliable communications and navigation even deep behind enemy lines, something that has been a major technical hurdle up to now. This represents a potential escalation in Ukraine's ability to strike at Russian military infrastructure far from the front lines. It also puts Musk in a politically sensitive position, given his previously complicated relationship with Ukraine's use of Starlink. The FT notes that Ukrainian officials believe hitting missile launchers at their source could meaningfully reduce the number of strikes on Ukrainian cities. Whether Musk agrees to extend Starlink's capabilities for this purpose remains to be seen. Here's a story that might surprise you. The Financial Times is reporting that North Korea is experiencing something of a construction and luxury goods boom, and the reason is directly tied to its support for Russia's war in Ukraine. According to the FT, Kim Jong-un's backing for Moscow has reportedly resulted in significant economic benefits flowing back to Pyongyang, fueling new building projects and an uptick in high-end consumer goods within the country. It's a rare glimpse into how North Korea is benefiting materially from what analysts describe as its deepening military partnership with Russia. This so-called dash for flash is notable in a country that has long been defined by extreme economic hardship for ordinary citizens. The development adds another layer to the growing strategic alignment between Moscow and Pyongyang and raises fresh questions about how international sanctions are holding up in the face of these kinds of bilateral arrangements. Turning now to Japan, where BBC News is reporting that the country has carried out its first execution since June of 2025. The man put to death was convicted of killing 5 people in an arson attack at a pachinko parlor. Japan is one of the few developed nations that still maintains capital punishment, and executions there are carried out with very little advance notice. Often, even the condemned prisoner's family isn't told until after the fact. This practice has drawn sustained criticism from human rights organizations and some of Japan's international partners. The execution is likely to reignite domestic debate in Japan about the future of the death penalty, particularly as younger generations increasingly question its continued use. For now, though, the government has defended the sentence as appropriate given the severity of the crime. And finally, a story with a strong cultural lesson attached. BBC News is reporting that a 26-year-old Swiss tourist has been sentenced to 1 year in prison in Bali after he posted an expletive-filled rant on social media about the island's sacred day of silence, known as Nyepi. The post sparked widespread outrage in Bali, where Nyepi is one of the most important days in the Balinese Hindu calendar. On this day, the entire island essentially shuts down. No flights, no vehicles on the roads, no loud activity, and locals observe a day of self-reflection and prayer. The tourists' mockery of these traditions was seen as deeply disrespectful, and Indonesian authorities moved swiftly. This case is a stark reminder that Bali, for all its popularity as a tourist destination, has deep cultural and religious traditions that visitors are expected to respect, and that the consequences of failing to do so can be very serious indeed. That's all for today's Genai World News. If you found this valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a broadcast. We'll see you next time.